Hello, everyone, and welcome to Beyond Insights. Thank you for joining us today. I am very excited to be joined by Felicia Goss, the head of Gauteng at Iridium, who's also been on SIFT campus doing our Zero Basics course. Thank you for joining us, Felicia.
Oh, it's so nice to be here. I'm so excited.
Awesome. So today we're talking on the topic of work-life balance. We had our great heading that Larica came up with from a previous episode, which is work-life balance. Do unicorns exist? So we're going to talk about this mythical creature that is work-life balance. Is it possible to find work-life balance, especially if you're working as an accountant? And I thought that you were a very good person to speak to about this because if anyone follows Felicia on LinkedIn, you'll see lots of posts about work, but also lots of posts about your running and other things that you do in your life. So yeah, maybe you can start by introducing yourself, a bit about what you do and a bit about Iridium.
Great. Yeah, I'm very excited on this topic because it's a topic that's so near to my heart. I'm very passionate about work-life balance. So yeah, I'm excited. Just a bit of an introduction. So obviously I'm Felicia Goss. I'm a chartered accountant and I did my articles at PwC. I then went to the US where I did a short-term secondment. I came back, I moved to Deloitte as an audit manager. And then I was like, okay, it's time to get out of the auditing space. So I became a financial manager at a large JSE listed company. And I learned so much then. I was so passionate about helping business owners. And I then got an opportunity to buy into a small accounting firm. I was there for a few months, and then I got the opportunity to open up the Iridium Gauteng office. So yeah, it's been amazing. For those who don't know, Iridium is an accounting firm where we focus on small, medium businesses. So it's so great to be able to work with business owners and, empower them and help them. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. So a lot of experience with auditing, for example, long hours. Is it possible, do you think, to achieve some kind of work-life balance, especially as an accountant, where you have like really, really busy periods, you have month end, year end, tax season? How do you manage to juggle all this work with everything else in your life?
So unicorns do exist. I think it's just your perspective of what does a unicorn look like. So to me, there is such a thing as work-life balance. I think work-life balance, people's perspective is just sometimes wrong. Like if you think of work-life balance, you think it needs to be in equilibrium. It needs to be kind of like 50-50.
Yes.
And obviously I'm an accountant, so I did a little sum of kind of unavoidable things that you have to do in a day. Like you need to shower, you need to go to work, you need to sleep. And when I added up all these things, it was like I got to 20 hours. And then I realized, okay, that leaves us with 4 hours in a day where we can actually do what you want, whether that be spending time with family or friends, exercising, reading a book, whatever your hobby is. So just in that aspect, like that's not balance, right? So I think you need to find I think also with work-life balance, it's unique to each person. And I think people have a blanket approach thinking, comparing to other people and being like, oh, but you're doing this, so like you have work-life balance, I don't, where you need to define what is work-life balance to you. And also realize that it's not always going to look the same. In every season, it looks different. So, yeah.
So what does work-life balance look like for you?
So I think like it starts with you spend a lot of time at work. So for me, it's very important to make sure that I'm in a job that I really enjoy. And that's currently where I am now. Because if you spend so much time at work and you hate every second of it, immediately your work-life balance becomes obscured. So that would be my first step. And then secondly, it's making time for those things that's important to you. So thinking about what is it that you want to do. For me, it's exercise. For me, it's reading. I like spending time with my family and friends and things. So for me, I make a priority of fitting that into my schedule and having boundaries when I have to be like, you know what, it's time now for me to exercise. So, yeah.
No, I think that's so important. And I think it's also a lot of people struggle with it because you lose so much energy when you're spending all day at work and you have these tight deadlines. And sometimes people just think, oh, I just don't have the energy to exercise or to see friends or whatever it is. So I think it's also about finding things that give you more energy and not just take the energy away.
100%. So like, I would not advise just working, going home and like watching Netflix because you think, oh, you're relaxing, you're resting, but actual fact, if you do that, you're never going to feel like you have work-life balance, because you're not doing something that's putting back into yourself, something that you enjoy, that's a hobby, or that kind of helps you mentally and physically. So I think it's important for you to think about what hobby or what is it that fulfills you.
Yeah, definitely. Check what I was going to ask next again. I suppose a tip that a lot of people have when they talk about finding work-life balance is, if you want to do specific things in your day, like exercise or cook a nice meal, you have to schedule it sort of into your daily timetable. Do you kind of schedule things in? Do you think that this works as an approach?
100%. So I'm a list person. I like making lists, and my calendar is my friend. So same as what you would like block in a meeting in your calendar and you stick to it because it's there. What I actually do is on a Sunday, I kind of like reflect on the week ahead. And I would go and say, okay, this week I want to run 4 times. I want to CrossFit 2 times. I've got this family event on. And I actually go and book it out in my calendar. And for me, it becomes it's in my calendar, so I'm going to do it. And I think what's important with that is like realizing that life does happen. So something might come up or things change, and being able to adapt to it. So what I like to do is not necessarily cancel my schedule, but reschedule. So if something comes up, I would then say, okay, I can't exercise today. Let me exercise tomorrow morning, shift things around and make sure I still get to it.
I suppose it's a fine balance between making sure that you actually do all the things that you put in your calendar, and also saying, today I just need a break. Yeah. It's just not going to happen. Like kind of being gentle with yourself.
Yes, 100%. I think that's a big thing as well. People are hard on themselves. Recently, I was sick for about 2 weeks, so I couldn't exercise at all. And I had to be kind to myself and be like, you know what, it's okay. I am missing out on some work now. I'm missing out on exercise, but be kind with yourself. Life does happen. And as soon as I got better again, it's important for you to, as quick as possible, break that ice and get back into it. Otherwise, you've now made a habit of not sticking to kind of your hobbies and things that's important to you. And then it becomes, the longer you leave it, the more difficult it is to get back into it again.
Oh, definitely. I've also recently gotten into running, not as much as you have, but I do like the park run every Saturday. Nice. And so that's a nice thing where I go, I haven't sort of scheduled it, but I know, okay, 8:00 every Saturday, I'm going to be running. I've convinced my dad and brother to join me now as well. And I have some friends. So it's also kind of having that accountability that you have other people that are also going to be there. And I always feel great, even if it's freezing cold and it's early in the morning, I feel great once I'm there.
Yeah, exactly. You always feel good afterwards. And for me, like exercising and things, yes, it's for your physical health, but for me, it's my mental health as well. I feel like it's time where I can like think and I can like, just deal with things. And I think it's important. You can't give from an empty cup. So it's very important to make sure you're doing those things that's filling your cup, because ever since I've started running more, I felt like my productivity at work has increased. So it definitely has a massive ripple effect.
And I think it's all interconnected, your mental health, your physical health. I also know like if you do more exercise, you'll sleep better. And that has really amazing effects. Obviously, you're going to be more productive if you've had a good night's sleep, but you also just feel better in general.
Yes. No, definitely. I agree with that.
Is there a time you can think of where your work-life balance was very unbalanced?
Yeah, I mean, we're human and life happens. So recently when I was sick now, there's been a couple of incidences like that where I can't get to the things that I want to do, and I have to cancel things, and I can't run and I can't exercise, and my work kind of like is piling up. So there is those times, but it's important to know that there's seasons. And a season is not going to last forever. So as long as for this time now, I'm going to put my head down. And if it's, let's say you're studying for an exam, to say, listen, like I'm going to focus on this now. And then as soon as that's over, to just get back into your routine again.
That's really interesting. I was actually at a book launch yesterday of this woman had written her debut novel, and somebody asked her about work-life balance because she has a full-time job and then she wrote the novel on the side. And she was saying, I'm not really balanced. Like when I'm trying to get, like when she was trying to finish writing the book, she said she didn't see any of her friends or family for like 6 months. Those last 6 months, she was just writing. And sort of now that she's reached that milestone, she's published, she's trying to balance things out again. But it was also that understanding of sometimes life isn't that balanced, and it's okay if you have a specific goal or a passion, you're writing a book, whatever it may be. it's okay to kind of shift the balance and shift priorities for a bit. But I think it can't be like long term. It's because otherwise that's also kind of leading you to burnout.
Yeah, exactly. So let's say you're a student studying part-time and working. Obviously, your balance at that stage is going to look different, right? But you're pushing through for the end goal, and having that like temporarily and knowing what you're working towards. But on that as well, what I try and do is, even if I have hectic deadlines and I work a lot or something's come up, I still prioritize. Like, even if I exercise half the time that I usually would, I think people think that, okay, no, I can't do anything now, I just have to work. But in actual fact, like, it's going to help your productivity if you kind of just have a bit of a break and still prioritize the things that's important to you. Yeah,
it's also to see that not as a luxury, but as a necessity. Like, you're not going to say, oh no, I don't need to eat or I don't need to sleep. Hopefully,
or shower.
Exactly.
I agree with you. Yeah,
so
definitely.
So you've already kind of spoken about what advice you would give to accounting students. What do you think of the idea of working smarter rather than harder?
Yeah, I think we're very good at filling our time. I think if you give someone 4 hours to do a task, they'll do it in 4 hours. And if you give them 2 hours, they're most probably going to be able to do it in 2 hours. So I think it's being conscious of what you fill your time with. And it's not saying I need to be at work for 10 hours, but you're not productive for 10 hours.
Yeah.
So I think it's finding ways of being efficient with your time, and also just being aware of what you're filling your time with.
I think that's kind of where goal setting plays an important role. I think you're very good at goal setting. I wonder, is there kind of a process that you follow both in terms of work and your personal goals? Yeah,
so I like to, once again, like, I write down my goals. For me, it's easier to keep myself accountable. And then also, like, let's say, whatever it may be, let's say it's work goals or personal goals, I like to share it with people, because once you put it out in the air, it's easier to keep yourself accountable, because then people's going to ask you, oh, how's it going with your running? If I didn't tell anyone I'm running, it's going to be very easy for me to kind of just like, oh, I'm going to stop now, no one will even know. So telling people about it, because then it keeps you accountable.
Oh, that's very interesting. I think I do a similar thing with my writing. I also, like the person whose launch I went to yesterday, I write a lot in my free time, and I'm always telling people about it. And they're like, oh, how is that book going? I'm like, oh, yes, I have been doing things.
Yeah, exactly.
It does help if there's someone else waiting to hear.
Someone's going to ask you about it. So if you haven't done something, you're going to feel like, oh, what am I going to tell them? So it keeps you accountable.
Do you have a friend or a colleague or maybe a client who's kind of changed your perspective on work-life balance?
That's a tough one. So I don't think there's one specific person. I also like to read a lot, and I won't even say there's one podcast or one book that kind of changed it for me. I think it's an accumulation of things. I think there's something that you can learn from every situation, every book you read, every kind of person you interact with, and it's being open to kind of learning those things. And as you go on through life, you like learn something small here, something small there, and you put it all together, and you're like, one day it kind of just like clicks, and you're like, I don't know where I learned this from. But I think it's just being open to learning something from every situation and every person. Yeah.
And in terms of managing your time, obviously that's a big part of trying to find some sort of balance. Do you have any tips for time management?
Yeah, once again, for me, it's a list. Prioritizing, because like I said, you can very easily like fill your time up, fill your day up. I can go sit at work for 8 hours and end up doing nothing. So it's for me important to say, okay, what is my priorities for the day? And then sticking to it. Like, if you give yourself 2 hours to do this, like, stick to that, because you very easily can kind of run over time, and then when you look again, the day's over. And so I think just like prioritizing what's necessary and what can you push over to the next day.
Yeah, I think definitely having those clear priorities is very helpful.
Yeah, otherwise you get stuck in something that's not actually urgent or important.
Yeah.
And then the day runs by, and then you're like, I didn't actually do what I needed to do.
So I suppose it's also that thing, I don't know, often at work you feel like, oh, everything is urgent, everything is a priority, and you need to actually be able to go, what is really urgent?
Yes.
What do other people need right now? What can I leave for later in the week?
Yeah, 100%. Like, I see that with my team. A lot of times they come to me and they're like, they're so stressed and overwhelmed. There's so many things to do. And then I would sit with them and kind of go through the list. And I'd be like, but that's not urgent. You can do that tomorrow. That you can do next week. And then at the end of the day, the list becomes so small of the things that's actually urgent. And then, yeah, just focus on those things at first.
I think also what's really nice about having a list, I also have like a long to-do list of all the things I want to do, is when you get to tick off the things on the list. Best feeling
of accomplishment.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Is there anything, if you think back on previous jobs or previous experiences that you've had, where you think that you really mismanaged your work-life balance, where if you could go back, you would do something differently?
I think we all go through like learning phases of seeing what works and what doesn't. So there's definitely been stages like that. But once again, I want to say, like, I don't regret it, because like, don't be hard on yourself. I think when it comes to work-life balance, it's kind of a trial and error thing. See what works for you, because it's unique to each person. So if you try something and it's not working, switch it around. Try a different hobby, or try a different time of day when you exercise. So I think, like, don't be afraid of making mistakes. And if it's not working, like, think about it and reshuffle things and try and see how you can like do it differently.
Yeah, I think that's a really healthy approach. I think a lot of people get very caught up, like these ideas, like there was the 5 a.m. club, and the idea that you have to be up at 5 a.m. and be productive, and, you meditate, and then you do this and you do that. And that doesn't work for everyone.
No, it doesn't. Like, there's times I am a morning person. So there's times I like to wake up early, but there's times also I wake up later. And I just feel like I need to sleep in today, and like, that's okay. Like, you are human. And just be kind on yourself. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. In terms of the profession in general, do you think it's becoming more difficult for accountants to find work-life balance, or is it becoming easier? I mean, there's kind of that, I don't know, double bind that we have technology now that can make things a lot quicker. It can speed up a lot of your tasks. But then there's also kind of the expectation of being always on that we get from online and using platforms like Zoom.
Yeah, I think that's a very controversial subject. Personally, for me, it hasn't gotten worse. For me, it's gotten better. But I think it's because I've been intentional about it. I think regardless of whether there's online Zoom and you can always be working, I think it's important for you to have those boundaries, because I think even like specifically like in a job like corporate, if you're just going to always put your hand up and always say, yes, I'll help, yes, I'll do, people are just going to take, then they're not going to say like, listen, I think you need a break now.
Yeah.
So you need to have those boundaries in place for yourself and know when it's time to rest and, when it's time to draw the line. If you're just intentional about it, for me, it's gotten better because I've learned how to be intentional about it.
I think that's really important. I think being able to say no to people, to not always offer to do everything, it can be really difficult, especially if you're like enthusiastic about what you're doing, but sometimes you take on too many things and you need to know where those boundaries should be for you.
Yeah, and even when it comes to like clients' expectations and things, I think it's important for us to firstly be realistic with our own expectations. I always say, like, I'd rather, what's that saying? Under commit, over deliver.
Yes, definitely.
So if realistically you can't do it in a week, like just having that open communication with the client or with your manager or whatever, and say like, I won't be able to get it done here, but how about next week? I think having that kind of boundaries in place and just being like open communication about it. Yeah.
I think it can be difficult with client expectations as well, because you want to, especially if it's a new client, I don't know, you really want to impress them and show them, like, look at all this great work I can do. But you don't want to say, oh, I'm going to have everything done next week, when actually the amount of work, I mean, you would have to be there until midnight or whatever every night. So how do you kind of balance that?
I think at the end of the day, like I think a lot of people are scared of saying no and pushing back. And at the end of the day, like, clients are also humans. They also have life and things come up and things happen. So I've never had a situation where a client has really like pushed back so much and said like, no, this is unacceptable. People are realistic. If you just have that open communication with them from the start, they are understanding. And obviously I'm not saying you're going to delay everything. There's a time and a place for everything. So there's times that I do work harder and I do push to get something done. But then there's times where I'm like realistic and like, okay, like I really won't be able to get this done. So I think it's just having that balance and knowing when to push and when to step back a bit.
Oh, definitely. I think some of the most important things we really covered is being able to set boundaries, being really intentional with your time, knowing how to say no, and knowing what works for you, and that like what looks like balance for someone else is not necessarily what looks like or feels like balance for you.
Yeah, 100%. And like I mentioned, there's different seasons in your life. So like right now, I can exercise a lot, but the day I have kids, my balance is going to look different. So I think it's important to realize that, and to kind of, as your life changes, you get a different job, like things happen, you kind of readjust what your work-life balance looks like. So it's never, work-life balance is not a fixed thing. Like one day you're going to figure it out and, it's just going to be perfect forever. It's a continuous thing that you have to be intentional about.
So the unicorn does exist.
It does.
But it might look different at different phases of your life, different seasons, even different times of the month, really.
Yeah, exactly. So someone's unicorn might be purple, someone else's might be pink. But it's defining what is work-life balance for you and testing it out. Like if you try it and like it's not working for you, like reshuffle. For example, like everyone says exercise in the morning. It doesn't work for me. And I've just learned to kind of adapt to that and be like, okay, I'll exercise in the afternoons, and you kind of like define what your work-life balance is like.
So what would you like people to take away from today's podcast?
Yeah, I think there's so many things, but I think it's just like be intentional about work-life balance. Take the time to really like think, what is it that you want? What is priority for you? And I think people are always like, yeah, I'll get a hobby one day, or, it's just going to happen one day. Be intentional about finding something that kind of gives you that break away from work. And that also just like brings your life into balance. Like just be intentional about it.
I suppose it's also really about considering, although work takes up a lot of your life, and as you said, it's very important to make sure that you are working at a place where you are happy to be there and you don't feel like, oh, I'm just dreading every moment and like waiting for the end of the day. It's also important to find something that fills your cup outside of work, like a different side of you.
Yeah, 100%. So whether it's like being an artist, painting, or reading a book, or whatever it is for you, like find that one thing that kind of is your escape, and the thing that makes you feel like, it's just ties everything together. You can't just work and sleep. That's not going to work.
It's not the balance we're looking
definitely
for.
Not.
Awesome. Well, those are really all the questions I have for you today. Thanks so much, Felicia. Really appreciate you being here.
No, it was an amazing experience, and I'm glad to have shared some of my insights.
So how do you manage to keep your mind off work when you're not at work?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, because if you are kind of in your personal time thinking about work the whole time, you're never really going to be present. Like if you're with your kids or your family, you're never really going to be present there. But on the other end, like you also need to allow yourself that time to process things. So what I like to do is I call it a transitional phase, where let's say I'm working from home, I will go exercise after work. So something that like breaks up the kind of from my work to, my evening. And also if I'm working from the office, it will be my driving time. So I'll then take that time to kind of give myself the opportunity to process everything, because it's important for us to kind of process the day, what happened, what went well, what didn't go well. And if you're just going to like avoid it, it's going to keep coming up. So allow that time where you actually like give yourself the time to process things. And then when you get home, you're like, okay, now I can switch off. Like I've had that time to kind of go through it. Now I can switch off. And obviously you're not never going to think about work. It's normal. There's times that I'm like, oh yeah, what about that? Or that's a great idea. But it's just being aware of it. And then when you're thinking too long about it, to like, okay, like I'm going to be intentional about changing my thoughts. Yeah.
I think that's really a great idea, the idea of a transitional phase. I think also for me, it's when I'm driving home from work and I'm listening to music really loudly. Like, this is me processing the day and kind of letting go of the day as well.
Yeah, because we're not robots. It's not just work button, home button. I think it's important to have that time to kind of like switch over. Yeah.
And I think especially when you're working from home, I find it helps if you move spaces. So if you always sit in one place and that's your sort of office, don't also have that be your bedroom if you can help it. Like have different spaces for different activities.
Yeah, 100%. And when work time's over, close your laptop. I think another big thing is like not having, so I have my emails on my phone, but I don't have the notifications come up.
Oh, same.
Because so I can go look at an email if I need to, but I don't have that constant like reminder, like while you spending time with your family, suddenly a notification pops up and then your mind's running. So I think it's important to kind of set kind of boundaries like that as well.
Thanks for tuning in to the Beyond Insights podcast.
Please like and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to right now.
And please share with any of your colleagues or friends or family members that you think might benefit from listening to this podcast.
That's all from us. Until next time, see you then.